The day my husband changed, the sun was shining. That's the part that still surprises me, because in my heart, it felt like the sky should have been gray. He was standing in the kitchen that morning, just like always. The smell of coffee filled the air, the radio was playing softly, and the light came through the window, landing on his face. But something was different. I couldn't tell you what it was exactly. Maybe the way he didn't hum along with the music. Maybe the way he didn't look at me when I said good morning. Or maybe it was the silence, heavy, strange, and quiet, like something waiting to break. That was the day my husband changed, and I didn't even know I was losing the man I'd spent 25 years loving. My name is Ruth Ann Taylor, and I've lived most of my 50 years here in Birmingham, Alabama. I work as a school secretary, been at the same little elementary school for nearly 2 decades now. Everybody there calls me Miss Ruthie. I like the sound of that. Soft, familiar, kind. I've always been a quiet woman, not the type to stir up trouble or raise my voice. I was raised in a family that believed in keeping peace, even when your heart was cracking. My mama used to say, "Ruthie, if you can't fix it, pray on it." And Lord knows I've prayed on many things. When I first met David, I was 24, working part-time at a library downtown. He came in one afternoon looking for a book about car engines, said he was trying to fix up his old Chevy. I remember laughing when I handed it to him and saying, "Well, I hope this book's got the answers, 'cause my daddy says men never read directions." He grinned, that wide, easy grin that could light up a room, and said, "Maybe I'll read 'em if you promise to help me." That was how it started. A smile, a joke, and a spark that felt simple and right. We got married 2 years later in a small church just outside the city. It wasn't a fancy wedding, just family, friends, and a whole lot of love. He wore a gray suit, and I had on a white dress my aunt helped me sew. When we said our vows, he looked me in the eyes and said, "You'll never have to worry about being alone, Ruthie." And I believed him. For a long time, he kept that promise. David wasn't a perfect man, but he was steady. The kind of man who worked hard, kept his word, and showed up when it mattered. He worked as a mechanic, ran his own little shop in town. Everyone trusted him because he was honest. He'd tell you if your car didn't need fixing, even if it meant he'd make less money. I used to bring him lunch, sandwiches and sweet tea, and sit by the garage while he worked. The smell of motor oil mixed with the sound of his laughter still plays in my memory like a song. We had our share of ups and downs, bills, stress, family disagreements, but through it all, I thought we were fine. Not perfect, but fine. Then came that day, that quiet, sunny day when something in him changed. It started small, little things I tried not to notice. He'd come home later, say he was just working extra hours. He stopped sitting with me at dinner, ate standing by the counter instead. He'd forget things, small things, like stories I told him or promises he made. At first, I thought he was tired. The business had been slow, and I knew money weighed heavy on him. So I did what I'd always done. I stayed patient, prayed, and tried to keep peace. But patience can feel like silence after a while, and silence can start to feel like distance. One night, I woke up and found him sitting in the living room alone. The TV was off, but the glow from the lamp lit half his face. He looked lost. I walked in quietly and said, "Baby, you okay?" He looked up at me, startled, and forced a smile. "Yeah, just couldn't sleep." I wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes told me it wasn't just sleeplessness. It was worry, guilt, something deeper. I sat beside him and reached for his hand. "You want to talk about it?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "It's nothing, Ruthie. Don't you worry." But I did worry, because that was the first time he called me Ruthie without softness in his voice. As the weeks went by, he grew quieter. He stopped laughing at my little jokes. He'd stare out the window for long stretches, like he was watching a life that wasn't his anymore. One evening, while I was folding laundry, he said out of nowhere, "Ruth, you ever feel like life just slipped by without you noticing?" I looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" He sighed and rubbed his temples. I don't know, I thought I'd be somewhere different by now. I thought I'd be more. I smiled softly. You built your own business. You raised a family. You take care of people every day. You are more. He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. That was the first time I realized he wasn't just tired of life. He was tired of himself. Sometimes change doesn't come loud. It doesn't break the door down or announce itself. Sometimes it just sits quietly in the corner until you look up one day and realize everything feels different. That's how it was with David. He didn't leave suddenly. He just started disappearing, little by little, in pieces too small to name. Our daughter Kayla was grown by then. She lived in Atlanta, working as a nurse, and she'd call every few days. She noticed something in my voice before I did. "Mama," she said one night, "you sound tired. Everything all right with you and Daddy?" I hesitated, then lied, like mothers often do. "We're fine, baby. Just work and life. You know how it is." She paused. "Okay, just make sure you're taking care of you, too." When we hung up, I sat in the quiet house and realized I didn't know how to do that anymore. Then came the morning that changed everything. David got up early, earlier than usual, and made breakfast. Pancakes, eggs, even bacon, though I hadn't seen him cook in months. When I walked into the kitchen, he smiled at me. A real smile, the kind I hadn't seen in so long. "Morning, Ruthie," he said softly. "Morning," I replied, cautious but hopeful. "What's all this?" He shrugged. "Just felt like making breakfast. Thought we could eat together." We sat down, and for a while it felt like old times. We talked about simple things, the weather, the neighbor's new dog, Kayla's last visit. But there was something in his eyes, something restless and far away. When we finished eating, he reached across the table and took my hand. "Ruthie," he said, "I want you to know you've been a good wife, the best I could have ever asked for." My stomach dropped. That's not the kind of thing a man says on a random Tuesday morning. I tried to laugh it off. "Why you talking like that? You make it sound like goodbye." He smiled sadly. "Maybe it is, in a way." And then he stood up, kissed my forehead, and left for work. That was the last normal morning we ever had. The rest of that day felt wrong, too quiet, too still. Even the clock seemed to tick louder. When he didn't come home by dark, I told myself he must have been busy. When midnight came, I told myself he must have stayed at the shop. But when dawn broke and his side of the bed was still empty, I knew something had happened. Something inside him had finally broken loose. Later that morning, I got a call from one of his coworkers. He said David hadn't shown up at the shop, said his truck wasn't there either. For 2 days, I waited. I called hospitals, police, friends. No one had seen him. Then, on the 3rd day, I found a letter in our mailbox. It was in his handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. All it said was, "I need to find myself again, Ruthie. Don't come looking. I'll be okay. Please take care of you." And just like that, the man I'd loved for 25 years was gone. I didn't cry right away. I just sat on the porch, letter in my hands, watching the sunlight move across the yard. The birds were singing, the world kept turning, and I thought, how can everything look the same when nothing is? That was the day he changed. The day my life split into before and after. And I didn't know it yet, but that was also the day I started to change too. When David left, I didn't call anyone for the first 2 days. Not my daughter, not my sister, not even Pastor Jenkins. I just moved through the house like I was walking underwater. His coffee cup still sat on the counter. His jacket was still on the chair by the door. His boots, those old worn ones I'd been asking him to replace, were still by the mat. He'd walked out of this house barefoot with nothing but his truck keys and his wallet. That kind of leaving don't come from impulse. That comes from pain that's been growing in the dark for a long, long time. On the 3rd day, I finally called Kayla. She answered on the first ring. "Mama, you okay?" I tried to keep my voice steady, but it broke anyway. "Your daddy's gone." "What do you mean gone?" she asked, her voice sharp. "He left a note, said he needed to find himself." Silence filled the line. Then, softly, "Oh, Mama." I could hear her trying not to cry. My baby, 30 years old, but still my baby. "I'm coming down," she said quickly. "No," I whispered. "Don't leave your job, Kayla. I'll be fine." "Mama, stop that," she said firmly. "You shouldn't be alone." I wanted to tell her I'd been alone long before he walked out, but I didn't. I just said, "All right, baby, come on home." Kayla arrived that evening. When I saw her car pull into the driveway, something inside me broke and healed all at once. She hugged me tight at the door, her scent, her warmth, the sound of her soft crying in my ear. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for days, and her arms were the first real air I'd gotten. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one David and I had breakfast at that last morning. I handed her the letter. She read it slowly, her lips trembling. Then she looked up at me, tears in her eyes. "He just left?" I nodded. He just left. That night, Kayla slept in her old bedroom, and I sat in the living room, staring at the front door. Every sound outside, a car, a dog, the wind, made my heart leap. I kept expecting to hear his truck pull in, to hear his keys in the door, to hear him say, "Ruthie, I'm sorry." But the night stayed silent. And silence, I learned, is heavier than anger. The next morning, Kayla made coffee and sat beside me on the couch. "Mama," she said softly, "you think he's with someone?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about it, of course. When a man disappears without a word, your mind goes to dark places. "I don't know," I finally said. "I used to think I'd know if he was lying, but now I don't know anything." She sighed. "Do you want me to help you look for him?" I shook my head. "If he wants to be found, he'll come back." That was something my mama used to say, but it didn't feel like wisdom anymore. It just felt like waiting. Over the next few weeks, life went on, in that strange, hollow way life does after someone leaves. People at church started asking questions. They'd pull me aside after service and whisper, "We haven't seen David in a while. Everything all right?" And I'd smile, that polite church smile we all know too well, and say, "He's just taking some time for himself." The pastor offered to pray with me, and I said yes, though most nights I'd already been praying until my knees ached. But prayer felt different now. It wasn't about asking God to bring him home. It was about asking God to help me understand why he left. About 3 weeks after he disappeared, I finally went to his shop. It felt strange walking in there alone. The smell of grease and gasoline hit me like a memory. His coworker, Benny, looked up and froze when he saw me. "Miss Ruthie," he said softly, "I've been worried about you." I managed a small smile. "You heard from him?" Benny shook his head. "No, ma'am. Last time I saw him, he said he was going to clear his head for a bit. He looked tired, though. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep." I nodded, eyes stinging. Before I left, Benny handed me something, a small, greasy envelope. "He told me to give you this if you ever came by." I didn't open it right away. I waited until I got home, sat at the kitchen table, and slowly unfolded it. Inside were 2 things, a folded piece of paper and a photograph. The photo was of us, me, him, and Kayla, taken at the beach almost 10 years ago. We were smiling, our arms around each other. I remember that day clearly. Kayla had begged us to take a trip, and we'd laughed so much we'd forgotten to pack lunch. On the back of the photo, he'd written, "This was the happiest I ever felt." The paper was a list, messy, written in his quick scrawl. Fix the old Chevy, pay the loan, visit Mama's grave, find peace. No, I love you. No, I'll come back. Just a list. That night, I cried for the first time since he left. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears that soaked the pillow while I whispered his name. I missed him, not just the man he'd been, but the way I'd felt beside him. Safe, known. And I hated myself for still loving someone who walked away so easily. Kayla tried to stay strong for me, but I could see her anger growing. One evening, she slammed a cabinet door and said, "I don't understand how you can just sit here and wait, Mama. He abandoned you." I looked at her, calm but tired. "He's still your father, Kayla." She crossed her arms. "He stopped being a father when he decided to disappear." Her words stung, but I couldn't argue. She didn't know the man I married. She only saw the one who left. I took a deep breath. "You can be angry, baby. You should be. But don't let it turn your heart cold. He's still a man, just lost." She shook her head. "You always make excuses for people who hurt you." Then she walked out, slamming the door behind her. I sat there in the quiet, her words echoing in my chest. Maybe she was right. Maybe I did make excuses. Maybe love makes fools of all of us. A month passed. Then two. The world started to move on. People stopped asking, the calls slowed down, and I went back to work. But everything around me reminded me of him. The hum of an engine, the smell of rain, the sound of a man's laugh at the grocery store. Even the wind sometimes carried his name. One evening after work, I stopped by the lake near our old neighborhood. It was a place we used to go when we needed to think. We'd sit on the hood of the truck, watch the sunset, and talk about dreams. Some we reached, some we didn't. I parked and sat on the bench, the sky painted in soft orange and pink. For the first time, I spoke out loud, not to anyone, just to the air. "David," I whispered, "if you're out there, I hope you found what you're looking for. But I need me too." And for the first time since he left, I felt a little piece of peace settle inside me. When I got home that night, Kayla was sitting on the porch. She looked calmer, softer. "I'm sorry, Mama," she said quietly. "I didn't mean to yell before." "I know, baby. You were just hurting." She nodded. "I talked to Pastor Jenkins today. He said sometimes people run not to escape us, but to escape themselves." I looked at her, proud and sad all at once. "That sounds like something your daddy would have said." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of crickets filling the night. Then she said, "You think he'll ever come back?" I looked out at the dark street, the empty driveway, and whispered, "If he does, he won't be the same man." She reached for my hand and squeezed it. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, I found something in the mailbox. No letter this time, just a small postcard. On the front was a picture of a mountain sunrise. On the back, in his handwriting, were 3 words: "Still finding peace." No name, no address, no return. Just that. I held it to my chest and closed my eyes. He was alive. That was enough, at least for now. That night, I dreamed of him, not as he left, but as he was. Laughing, fixing that old Chevy, wiping grease on his shirt, smiling at me across the yard. When I woke, tears were on my cheeks. But this time, they weren't heavy. They felt clean. In the months that followed, I started to change too. I planted flowers in the backyard, ones he always said he'd help me with, but never did. I joined a book club, went to the farmer's market on Saturdays, even took a short trip with Kayla. Life didn't feel full again, not yet, but it started to feel mine. One afternoon, while sitting in church, I realized something. Sometimes people don't leave because they stop loving you. They leave because they can't face the parts of themselves they see in your eyes. And maybe, just maybe, forgiveness isn't about waiting for them to come home. Maybe it's about learning. It had been almost a year since David left. A whole year of seasons turning, of trees shedding their leaves, growing green again, and birds returning to the same branches. And somehow, I was still here. Still in the same house, with the same front porch and the same creaky steps. But I wasn't the same woman who'd stood on that porch crying with a letter in her hand. No, I had changed too. Not in a way people could see right away, but in the quiet, invisible ways that come from surviving what you never thought you could. I learned how to fix the leaky sink by watching videos online. I learned how to drive out to the lake alone and not cry. I even learned how to sleep in the middle of the bed without feeling guilty for taking up space. I started volunteering at the church food pantry on weekends. There was something about handing a warm meal to someone in need that healed a piece of my own emptiness. Pastor Jenkins would often say, "Sometimes God don't take the pain away. He just teaches you how to live with it." And I think that was becoming true for me. Kayla still called me every day. Some days we talked about simple things, her work, her patients, the new nurse she couldn't stand. Other days we sat in silence, the kind that only mothers and daughters can share without words. One night she said, "Mama, you ever think about dating again?" I laughed softly. "Dating? Baby, I ain't got the energy for all that." She chuckled. "I'm serious. You're still young, beautiful, and you deserve happiness." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Maybe, one day. Right now, I'm just learning how to love myself again." But one morning, a calm, gray Tuesday, everything shifted again. I was at work sorting attendance sheets when my phone buzzed. The number wasn't saved, but something about it made my heart stop. I stepped outside to answer. "Hello?" A pause. Then a man's voice, low, familiar. "Ruthie?" For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "David?" He exhaled. "Yeah, it's me." My knees went weak. I had to sit down on the steps outside the school. "Where are you?" I whispered. "I'm in Tennessee, small town outside Knoxville." "Tennessee," I repeated, trying to make sense of it. "Why there?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "I just ended up here, working at a repair shop, staying in a little room over it. I've been trying to get my head right." There was silence, heavy and full of things we weren't saying. Then he added, "I got your address from Kayla. I hope you don't mind." My heart twisted. No, I don't mind. I don't know what to say." He sighed. "You don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know I'm okay." But I did want to say something. I wanted to ask why. Why he left. Why he didn't call. Why he thought I could just go on like nothing happened. But all that came out was, "Do you plan on coming home?" He was quiet for a long time before saying, "I don't know if I can, Ruthie. Not yet." Something in my chest broke softly, like a string snapping. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying his voice in my head. He sounded tired, older, softer. But he also sounded like a man still running. Part of me wanted to get in the car and drive straight to Tennessee, to find him, hold him, and ask all the questions that haunted me every day. But another part, the wiser, quieter part, told me that if I went after him again, I might lose myself all over. So I stayed home. Over the next few weeks, he called a few more times. Never for long. Just quick check-ins. "How are you?" Or, "Tell Kayla I love her." Sometimes he'd call late at night, when his voice sounded distant, like he was somewhere far away inside his own mind. One night he said, "I'm working on getting better, Ruthie. I've been seeing a counselor here. I think I finally understand what went wrong." I swallowed hard. "What did go wrong, David?" He hesitated. "I got lost in all the things I wasn't. I spent years trying to be strong, to be enough. And when I couldn't, I started resenting myself and everyone who loved me. Tears burned in my eyes. "You didn't have to face that alone," he said softly, "but I didn't know how to let you in anymore. Every time you looked at me, I saw the man I was supposed to be, and I couldn't bear it." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he whispered, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words, after all the silence, cracked something open in me. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the start of it. After that call, I started writing letters. Not to send, just to write. Every night before bed, I'd sit at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and write him a note I'd never mail. "Dear David, today I fixed the back porch light. You used to promise you'd get around to it, but I finally did it myself." Or, "Dear David, Kayla's coming home next weekend. She still gets mad when your name comes up, but I think she misses you too." Each letter was a little piece of healing, a way to let go of what I couldn't say out loud. Then, one day, a package arrived. No return address, just my name written in his handwriting. Inside was a small wooden box. When I opened it, there was a folded note and a ring, the same silver band I'd given him on our 10th anniversary. The note said, "I've been carving wood lately. Helps me think. This box is for you, to keep your letters in. I can't promise I'll be home soon, but I'm trying to become the kind of man who deserves to be." I pressed the note to my chest, tears falling into the paper. It wasn't a reunion, it wasn't a promise, but it was a bridge, one plank at a time between what we were and what might still be. That night, I sat on the porch, the wooden box beside me. The cicadas hum in the dark, and a warm breeze brushed my face. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry or broken. I just felt grateful. Grateful that he was alive, grateful that he was trying, grateful that I had found peace in his absence, and now in his reaching out. A few days later, Kayla came by. I showed her the box and the note. She looked at it for a long time before saying, "So he's finally trying to make things right." I nodded. "In his own way, yes." She sighed. "Do you think you'll take him back if he comes home?" I thought about it. About all the lonely nights, all the tears, all the quiet mornings I faced alone. And then I thought about love. Not the kind that's perfect, but the kind that endures even after it breaks. "I don't know," I said softly. "I think love can change shape. Maybe we won't be husband and wife again. Maybe we'll just be 2 people who found forgiveness." She smiled sadly. "You always find the softest way to look at things." I laughed a little. "That's how I survive, baby." As the weeks passed, his letters started coming more often. Sometimes a short note. "The mountains are turning gold. You'd love it here." Sometimes just a simple, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I never replied. I didn't need to. He knew I was still here, living, healing, waiting without waiting. One Sunday afternoon, after church, I sat under the big oak tree in our yard. The light filtered through the leaves, warm and golden. And I realized I didn't feel like I was waiting anymore. For so long, my life had revolved around his absence. But now it revolved around me. My laughter, my peace, my own small joys, like fresh coffee, blooming flowers, or the sound of rain on the roof. I finally understood something my mama used to say when I was a girl. Sometimes the person who leaves ain't the only one who changes. The one who stays does too. And that's what had happened to me. David changed when he left, but I changed by learning how to stay. It was almost 2 years to the day since David left when the phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. I was in the kitchen making cornbread for Sunday dinner. The smell of butter and warmth filled the air when the call came through. For a second, I just stared at the screen, my heart thudding slow and heavy. Then I answered. "Hello? Ruthie." His voice hadn't changed much. It was still that same steady tone, deep, calm, familiar. But there was something new in it, too, a softness. "Hi, David," I said quietly. "How are you?" Good, he said after a pause. Better, I think. I've been in counseling regular, helping out at a church up here, trying to do right by myself. That's good, I said. I'm proud of you. He chuckled, just a small sound, and it caught me off guard, that laugh I used to hear every morning. I don't know if I deserve that yet, but thank you. Then he got quiet again, the way people do when they're carrying words too heavy to say. Finally, he spoke. I'm coming home, Ruthie. My hand froze over the counter. Home? Yeah, he said softly. I think I'm ready. The next few days felt like a dream I didn't know whether to believe in. I cleaned the house, not because I had to, but because I needed something to do with my hands. I washed the curtains, swept the porch, and even baked his favorite lemon cake. Kayla called that night, and I told her, my voice trembling, "Your daddy says he's coming back." She was quiet for a long time. "Mama, are you sure that's what you want?" I took a deep breath. I don't know what I want, but I think I need to see who he's become. She sighed softly. All right, I'll come down this weekend, just in case. Just in case of what? I asked. She hesitated. In case you need someone to remind you that you're strong, no matter what he says. My heart swelled with pride. My little girl, now my protector. Saturday morning came. The sky was clear, pale blue, the kind of morning that feels like forgiveness. I sat on the porch, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, waiting. Every sound of a car made me lift my head. Then, after what felt like forever, I saw it, a familiar old truck pulling into the driveway. It was his. The same truck, but older now, rust creeping up the sides, paint faded by time. When he stepped out, I almost didn't recognize him. His hair was grayer, his shoulders a little more bent, but his eyes were softer, like he'd been walking through storms and finally stepped into the calm. We just stood there, looking at each other across the yard. No words, just two people with 1,000 memories and 1,000 miles between them. Finally, he spoke. "Hey, Ruthie." "Hey, David." He smiled. "You look good." I laughed softly. "You need new glasses." That broke the ice. We both chuckled, awkward at first, then easy, like the sound of something healing. I invited him inside. He paused by the doorway, like he wasn't sure he belonged there anymore. But when he stepped in, his eyes swept the room slowly. The photos on the wall, the old rug, the same dining table. "You kept it all the same," he said quietly. I nodded. "Some things don't need changing." He smiled, but there was pain behind it. Some things did. We sat at the table. I poured him coffee, black, just the way he used to like it. He wrapped his hands around the cup, staring into it for a long time before he finally spoke. "I owe you an explanation." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything, David." "Yes, I do," he said firmly. "You deserve to know why." He took a deep breath. "When I left, I thought I was doing you a favor. I thought if I could fix myself, maybe I'd come back better, the man you needed. But the truth is, I was just running from shame." He looked down, his voice shaking slightly. "I lost myself long before I left. The business, the pressure, the bills. I started feeling like a failure. Every morning I'd look at you, and I'd think, she deserves more than this tired, broken man." I felt tears rise in my throat, but I stayed quiet. I told myself I'd be gone for a week, maybe 2. Then a month passed, then another. The longer I stayed away, the harder it got to come back. I didn't know how to face you. I thought you'd hate me. I shook my head, my voice trembling. "I never hated you, David. I was hurt, yes. Angry, yes. But hate? No." He looked up then, his eyes wet. "You should have." "No," I whispered, "because love like ours don't turn into hate. It just changes shape." He smiled weakly, like those words reached something deep inside him. We talked for hours, about the past, the silence, the pain, the things we never said when we should have. He told me about Tennessee, about working in a small repair shop run by a retired pastor. Said the old man gave him a room upstairs and told him, "You can't fix cars until you fix your soul." So he started going to church again, started praying, started talking to a counselor. He'd even started helping young boys in the neighborhood learn mechanics so they'd stay out of trouble. Listening to him, I realized the man sitting across from me wasn't the same one who'd walked away. He'd been broken, yes, but now he looked like someone who'd learned how to live with his cracks. Later that evening, Kayla arrived. When she saw him, her face froze. He stood up, nervous. "Hey, sweetheart." She crossed her arms. "You don't get to call me that right away." He nodded, accepting it. For a while, they just stared at each other. Then, softly, she said, "You really hurt Mama." "I know," he whispered, "and I'll never stop being sorry for that." Tears filled her eyes. "Then why'd you do it?" He looked down. "Because I didn't know how to stay when I felt like nothing. I thought leaving would protect her from me. I was wrong." She wiped her eyes and whispered, "You sure were." Then she turned and walked outside. I wanted to follow, but David stopped me. "Let her be. She needs to let it out." He was right. Later that night, after Kayla had gone to bed, we sat on the porch together. The air was warm and full of crickets. He looked up at the stars and said, "I don't expect you to take me back, Ruthie. I just wanted to see you, to tell you I'm sorry face to face." I nodded. "I know." He turned to me. "Do you still love me?" The question hung in the air like a soft ache. I thought about it, about all the mornings I woke up alone, the nights I cried quietly into the pillow, the long hours I spent learning how to live without him. Then I said, "I love the man you were, and I love the man you're trying to be, but I've learned to love myself, too." My heart smiled, eyes glistening. "You always did have the stronger heart." I chuckled softly. "Maybe. Or maybe I just didn't have a choice." We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty. Then he said, "Can I see you again? Maybe slow, dinner, walks, just talking?" I hesitated. The old me would have said yes immediately, but the woman I'd become needed time. "Let's just see how tomorrow feels," I said gently. He nodded. "Tomorrow's good enough for me." He stayed in town a few days. We talked every morning on the porch. Sometimes we'd laugh about old memories, like the time he burned the Thanksgiving turkey, or when we got lost on the way to Kayla's graduation. And sometimes we just sat quietly, watching the world go by. On his last morning before heading back to Tennessee, he handed me another letter. "I wrote this a while back," he said. "Didn't know if I'd ever give it to you." I waited until after he left to open it. It said, "Ruthie, you were my calm when I was chaos. You were home when I was lost. I don't expect you to forget or to take me back. I just hope that when you think of me, it's not with pain anymore, but peace. Thank you for loving me, even when I didn't know how to love myself." By the time I finished reading, my tears had fallen onto the page. But they weren't bitter tears. They were soft, full of something like release. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt something shift in me again. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting, I realized. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what can't be changed. David had changed, but so had I. And maybe that was the whole point. Not to go back, but to go forward as different people who once shared a life. It's been 6 months since David came back to town. 6 months since that old truck pulled into my driveway and changed the rhythm of my quiet life once again. We didn't rush into anything, not love, not friendship, not even forgiveness. We just took our time. Like two people learning how to breathe the same air again without hurting. Every Sunday, he'd stop by after church. Sometimes we'd talk for hours. Sometimes he'd help me fix the loose boards on the porch. Sometimes we didn't talk at all. We'd just sit side by side, letting the sound of birds and the soft hum of the afternoon fill the silence between us. I noticed small things, the way he carried himself now, lighter somehow, the way he listened instead of rushing to speak, the way his laughter came easier, not like before when it carried the weight of exhaustion. He was still David, but not the same one who left. And I was still Ruth, but not the same woman who waited. We'd both grown, and that growth came with peace. One Sunday in late September, the air turned cooler. The leaves had started falling, covering the yard like faded gold. He came over that morning with a basket of apples. "Figured we could make a pie," he said, smiling. I laughed. "You just want me to make the pie while you eat half the apples." "Maybe," he said with a grin, "but it's the company that counts." So we peeled apples together at the kitchen table, something so ordinary, yet it felt like a prayer in motion. His hands worked slow, steady, careful, the way a man handles something fragile. At one point, he said softly, "You know, I don't deserve these moments." I looked at him. Maybe not, but neither of us deserved the pain either, and yet here we are. He smiled faintly. Here we are. We both knew those words carried a world of meaning. After the pie baked, we sat by the window as the smell filled the kitchen, sweet, warm, like home. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A ring. Simple, gold, slightly worn. "This was yours," he said quietly. "You left it on the dresser when I moved out." I took it, feeling its cool weight in my palm. "I almost threw it away once." "Why didn't you?" "Because even when I was angry, I didn't want to forget the good years, the laughter, the way you used to hold my hand when life got hard. I didn't want to erase all of that." He nodded, eyes glistening. "I kept my ring too, never could take it off." For a while, neither of us spoke. Then he said softly, "I'm not asking you to put it back on, Ruthie. I just wanted you to have it, not as a chain, but as a memory." I smiled faintly. "Thank you, David." That night, after he left, I sat alone in the living room. The ring rested in my palm, catching the light from the lamp. So much of my life had been about waiting, waiting for someone to come home, waiting for something to change, waiting for the pain to stop. But sitting there that night, I realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for him, not for anything. I'd found peace in the life I'd built after he left, a life full of quiet mornings, my daughter's laughter, my garden, my faith. And now, peace in knowing he'd finally found his way too. That's what love is sometimes, not a fairy tale, not a reunion, but the quiet acceptance that some hearts just need space to heal before they can meet again. A few weeks later, he told me he was thinking about going back to Tennessee for good. We were sitting outside under the big oak tree when he said it. "I think I'm supposed to stay there a while," he told me, "help the boys at the shop, maybe open a little place of my own." I nodded slowly. "I think that's good for you." He studied my face for a moment. "You'll be okay?" I smiled. "David, I've been okay for a long time now. You just didn't know it." He chuckled softly. "Guess I didn't." He took my hand gently, just for a moment, the way you hold something sacred. "Thank you," he whispered, "for not hating me, for letting me find my way back, even if just for a while." Tears filled my eyes, but I smiled. "Thank you for changing, for coming back different. That's all I ever prayed for." When his truck pulled away that day, I didn't cry. I stood on the porch, watching the dust rise behind him, the sound of the engine fading into the trees. It didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the right kind of goodbye, one without bitterness, one where both hearts were finally free. As I went back inside, I noticed the light streaming through the kitchen window, the same light that had shone through all my years of waiting, hurting, and healing. And I smiled, whispering to myself, some stories don't need a happy ending, just a peaceful one. Time moved gently after that. Kayla got promoted at work. She called me every week to check in, her laughter filling my evenings. Sometimes she'd ask, "Mama, do you miss him?" And I'd say, "Not in the way you think. I miss who we were, but I'm grateful for who I became." She'd sigh softly, "You're stronger than I'll ever be." I'd chuckle, "You already are, baby. You just don't see it yet." Winter came, then spring again. The garden bloomed wild that year, roses, marigolds, little white daisies. I started volunteering at the community center, teaching women how to make simple meals on a budget. We'd laugh, share stories, cry a little. One afternoon, one of the ladies asked me, "Miss Ruth, do you ever regret forgiving him?" I paused, then smiled gently. "No, forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. It's what let me breathe again." Sometimes, on quiet evenings, I still think of David. Not with longing, not with pain, but with gratitude. Because he was part of my journey, part of the woman I became. He taught me what it means to hold on and what it means to let go. One day, a letter came in the mail. It was from Tennessee. It read, "Ruthie, the shop's doing well. The boys call me Mr. D. I tell them stories about you sometimes, about your strength, your patience, your cornbread that could fix a man's bad mood. I don't know where life will take me next, but I want you to know you were my turning point. A day I changed wasn't when I left, but when I realized I wanted to come home and make peace. Thank you for giving me that chance. Always, David." I folded the letter carefully, tears blurring the ink. Then I smiled, placing it beside the old photo of us, the one taken years ago under the same oak tree where we said goodbye. Now, when I sit on that porch at sunset, I don't feel alone. I feel surrounded by memories, by love, by peace. The world feels soft again, gentle, forgiving, like the day after a long rain. And when the wind brushes my cheek, I whisper, "Thank you, Lord, for the day he changed, and for the day I did too."